last guy, let's talk about Caleb Banks, who has been a riser since the Senior Bowl. He has been a building name in a class that I think needs rare athletes, needs a blue chip player to get excited about. He missed most of this year due to a foot injury. He does not have the same issues of a long injury history like Tyson. Where do you stand on Caleb Banks? Do you think that and also providing the context of the details of what hurt him this year, do you think that Caleb Banks is going to get held back by the injury that he suffered this season?
Short term, no, which is why I think that I don't think that it will necessarily make him drop a ton. And of course, we're talking about the foot injury that cost him the majority of the 2025 college football season. Joe, I brought this one up to you, though, because I feel like nobody has really talked about the foot issue with Caleb Banks. And for me, when we're talking about a 6'6", 335-pound defensive tackle, foot injuries are scary, man. Like, that's a scary proposition for a player of that size, of that position. It's similar to the big men conversation in the NBA when they start having foot injuries. Like, those things don't typically just go away and never resurface. Like, it is a scary proposition because no matter what, you're on your feet, man, and you are putting a lot of wear and tear on your lower body. And those foot issues, I think, tend to kind of creep back a little bit for some players. So I don't think it's necessarily going to drop him much, if at all, but I do think that it's just interesting in terms of like that full scope, long-term outlook projection for NFL teams. How much do you worry about a 335-pound, 6'6" man with foot injury? Like, that kind of, for me, is a little bit of a troubling just injury to have for that position, for that body type. I am a little bit curious why no one's really talked about that much, because that is an issue that I think can surface again potentially in the future with just his body type.
I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to try and take the angle of. No, I'm not. I'm not going to try and take the angle of, I think that X injury translates to long-term problems in whatever degree. I think you bring up a good point when you have foot problems. I just don't know what exactly the foot issue was. I do think very simply, Banks not having a long list of issues, I don't think that really bothers me personally very, very much.
Right.
But I do kind of come to this belief, as you're saying, another position group that's got some really solid options. Do teams choose to just hold off, maybe hope that he falls to them, or maybe to some degree hope that one of these other guys is on the radar and have somebody that would be more consistently available? Defensive tackle, right. I know that there's been a little bit more of a discourse after the Super Bowl with the defensive tackle impact from the Seahawks defensive line, but I think that defensive tackles, you don't need the superstar. You just need a solid starter. His position might ultimately be what kills him in this situation. If he was a pass rusher, and he was an otherworldly pass rusher, taking the risk with an injury on a player who you think could be a 15-sack pass rusher is a very different conversation. It's also different with Jermon McCoy, who we talked about the other day. McCoy, being a corner, coming off the ACL, I'd take that risk because having a shutdown corner is incredibly important. Having a top defensive tackle in the league is not as key for your defense reaching its potential. You can get by with average level starters with elite athletes everywhere else. But I firmly do believe that Caleb Banks is worth overlooking that problem because the kid is an unbelievable athlete for his size. And I think he could end up being one of the most disruptive defensive tackles in the league if he's given the opportunity to do so.
So a little bit more context, because I did a little bit more digging on it as I was talking, looking through notes and whatnot. Okay. So it was a foot issue that was initially just called a significant foot injury during fall camp. And then he re-aggravated against LSU, Joe, which required surgery. So it sounds like it was a broken foot is kind of what we're talking about here, right? I'm not overly worried because until it's a recurring issue, I don't feel like you need to be overly worried about it. My point, though, and something that you just said, I think that's kind of going to spark an interesting one, is that what makes Caleb Banks so rare is not that he's 6'6", 335 pounds, and that is, 35-inch arms or whatever. What makes him rare is that he's that, and he's so explosive for his size. If that does become a issue that rises again and becomes kind of a more consistent-ish issue, then that might zap what makes him such a special player. Because without that explosiveness, he's still 6'6", 335 and can play, right? So he can still play, but is he a difference maker if he doesn't have that same level of explosiveness? I don't necessarily think that he is, right? Like, is he just going to be a good two-gapping defensive tackle who's going to hold the point of attack consistently? I don't think so. I think he's a guy that you want to create some penetration opportunities for, and that explosiveness, I think, is a huge barometer of just how good he can be, right? So that's where I get semi-worried, but I do think we're on the same page in terms of until it becomes a recurring issue, I'm comfortable still drafting him somewhere in the first round because he's such a freaky athlete. But I am full transparency. I'd be lying if I wasn't a little bit just like, foot issues sometimes come back, man. So like, if that becomes a recurring issue, that would bring worry. But I agree with you today. I'm not worried about it until it does become a recurring issue. But I do think the fact that he re-aggravated it against LSU and then needed surgery for it, I think that is a negative sign of like he thought he was back from the foot issue and then all of a sudden you re-aggravated it and then you require surgery. So that is kind of where that's where my hesitancy comes from in terms of just being full stop. I'm in on Caleb Banks. I'm in on the athlete Caleb Banks, but I do think there's a lot of layers to the evaluation of Caleb Banks.